Hello, Husker fans, and welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, Danny Gillette, and we are live here on this Wednesday morning, and we're here to talk about a trio of commitments that have happened for Nebraska over the past 3 days, including Larry Miles last night. So we're going to break down what that means for the 2026 class, which is slowly starting to climb up those rankings. So we'll break down all those commitments, look ahead to who could be next in joining this 2026 class as Nebraska moves into the month of July here and get closer to the football season. We're less than 10 weeks until we get to see Nebraska football. This will be, I think our last month without because in August we got Nebraska football coming. So So before we get into all that, please make sure you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section. And if you're watching live on YouTube or Facebook or one of our social channels, be sure to say hi and hop into the chat. And Danny, how are you on this Wednesday morning?
Good. I got my fan on so my computer doesn't overheat from all the typing I've had to do over the past couple of days, and that's a good thing. Very good thing. I'm excited to get into it today, and even since our last show, we've had a couple of commitments. So it's definitely you want to close out June strong, and screw you, Eli Letterman over at ESPN for writing about Nebraska's failures on the recruiting trail because they shut you up.
Yeah, I saw people reference that article. I guess didn't realize that ESPN wrote commit recruiting articles anymore. So that kind of surprised me.
Well,
but
that's the thing right there. And I didn't even realize ESPN did recruiting anymore. So,
I mean, I knew they did the rankings, but I didn't know that it's like they have one guy that kind of does it.
They barely even do those, so I don't know.
Yeah, and but it's kind of funny. So hello, James from Kansas.
Hi, James.
Go Big Red here from Montana and Massachusetts, all across the country. That's what we're about here. That's for Big Red. But yeah, it's been a fun month, I would say, for Nebraska. And I know a lot of fans, kind of were concerned about the rankings. I had a few people, being like, "Oh, Nebraska's last in the Big Ten in the recruiting rankings," which I think they've moved up a little bit. I'm not sure. I know they've moved up in the team rankings. I don't know where they are in the Big Ten rankings, but 3 commitments since Monday. The big one to me, Claude and Puma, 6'7", 308 out of Chicago, 169th overall in the 24/7 Sports Composite rankings. So if we reference rankings, that's usually, unless I'm saying another ranking, that's the one I'm referencing. 14th among offensive tackles. I really like this kid. He's going to take some work. He's not somebody that's going to come in right away ready to play, but I do think there's a good chance that this is going to be, Trey Taylor's blindside protector in Claude and Puma. I mean, he's got all the tools. He's got long arms. He's got great feet. He just needs some seasoning. And but I think he's a really good. I think he's the best offensive tackle that Matt Rule has recruited. At least the one that has the most potential to be like a true left tackle blindside protector. But yeah, just a crazy month of June. It capped off with Larry Miles. So let's talk about Larry Miles, I guess, since that's the most recent one. 5'11", 175 pounds. His recruitment kind of picked up steam late, but this kid had 45 offers. I mean, I know it was Nebraska, Pittsburgh's, Kentucky, and kind of Miami there at the end, but a ton of teams have offered this guy over 1,200 yards receiving last season. I know he's talked about as a slot. I think he's going to be more than a slot receiver. I really feel like he reminds me a lot of Ja'Cory Barney, and I feel like
I was just about to say the same thing. Yeah,
and in the sense that Ja'Cory Barney, where he was a 4-star recruit, but I feel like he was a little. I mean, he was like in the 300-400 range, so not like Cortez Mills style, and so I feel like he made a bigger impact earlier than maybe was expected based off his ranking. And I think Larry Miles is. I know this receiving core is really loaded, but I just feel like with slot types they don't have quite as many. They have Barney, Demetrius Bell, and now I think Larry Miles will fit perfectly in that mold and give Nebraska a kind of a shifty kind of guy in the slot that I think Dylan Raiola and I think Trey Taylor are really going to enjoy over the next few years.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head. When I saw Larry Miles, he reminded me exactly of Ja'Cory Barney. And that's a really good thing. That's a really, really good thing. When you talk about how he can get out in space and how shifty he is, I know some people said he was too short to play wide receiver, but I think he's the perfect slot receiver. And when you look at some of the outside weapons that Nebraska has, and you combine, Miles, putting him in the slot, and just the options like you talked about Monday, Chris, the eligibility of a guy like Isaiah Hunter, and some of these transfer players having multiple years of eligibility offensively. That can also help Miles kind of ease into things a bit. But I really love Miles. I think he's a dynamic player. He's very shifty, very quick, and this was a really good win for Nebraska and another win in the state of Florida. We talk about a big offseason and all these transfer portal moves and things like that. Shout out to Matt Rule for bringing back Phil Simpson, because I feel like Phil Simpson has been the one driving the Florida train, the Nebraska train, and so far it's working.
Yeah, and just to run down really quickly with Larry Miles, what his rankings are. The On3 industry rankings have him 493. And then you look at some of the individual rankings where he's ranked among wide receiver. The Rivals has him as a 4-star, and they have him as the 8th best wide receiver in the country. So that is kind of interesting to me. Whereas ESPN has him 125th, 24/7 has him 114th, and On3 has him at 61st. So just giving you a kind of a heads up for what his offer sheet, or I guess some of the his rankings are, excuse me. But you look at some of the teams that have offered him, besides the teams that I just mentioned. Oregon was in the mix for this guy, Michigan, Miami. I mean, there was Notre Dame, just a bevy of teams that were in on Larry Miles. So yeah, this was a very big commitment. And looking back on it, this is the 9th commitment for Nebraska since the start of June. So
yeah,
this class, they they really did a great job. And I think Matt Rule, again, and this entire class, not just Matt Rule, but they need to be commended for the way that they're able to close out, recruitments. So, I mean, they did that with Claude Puma. I mean, this is a guy that had, I think, 6 or 7 SEC offers. He had 14 or 15 Big Ten offers. So almost every team in the Big Ten, including Michigan and Ohio State, offered this kid. A lot of SEC teams, Auburn and Florida were in that right till the end. So, that's one where Nebraska showed that they do have that SEC money, and they paid it for Puma. And yeah, so I mean,
a good investment, by the way.
Yeah, which I mean, I definitely agree too. That is a good investment. I like Leon Noyle too. I don't know if he's going to be an offensive tackle or not. I think he has a chance. I mean, he's 6'4", 255, 6'4" and a half, 6'4" and a half, 255 pounds. He's got really good footwork. And when I watch him, again, this is a guy that I really enjoy watching him run block. And for an offensive tackle, I think that's pretty interesting. I've heard even talk of him potentially being a center, maybe a guard. But to me, it makes sense to get a guy like that. He's talented. It's like, hey, maybe he can play tackle. Yeah. Maybe he can play guard. Who knows? We'll figure it out. But he can play, and they'll find the spots. That's, the idea of finding the 5 best offensive linemen. I think that's a good idea. I mean, yes, there's some guys like, Puma who you want at left tackle, but outside of that, I feel like with Waterman, Ainsworth, and Noyle, I feel like those are guys that could potentially all play multiple positions, which I feel like increases the chance that Nebraska is going to hit on them as recruits.
And, those 3 names you mentioned, Waterman, Ainsworth, Noyle, even Puma, all landed in the month of June. And, it's almost like Nebraska was just kind of waiting a little bit throughout the course of the offseason, because I remember me and you talking at the beginning of the month, Nebraska, what's the direction of this class? And we asked that question again once CJ Brona kind of decommitted, like how's this class going to shape out? We got our answer really quickly. So, I mean, this class was probably forming, late May and even early June. And so shout out to those guys for, doing the work and landing some really solid linemen. I know everybody loves the offensive linemen, and Nebraska got a good one in Puma this week, and Ainsworth and Waterman a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, absolutely. I like this 4-man class. And Schluter, good morning. And he says good morning and go Big Red. And also soaked about Larry Miles. We have a lot of wide receiver weapons now. Yeah, it is a pretty loaded room. You look at, this year with Dane Key. But even if you take him, out of the mix, if you're looking ahead to the 2026 season, you're going to have Isaiah Hunter, Ja'Cory Barney,
Yep.
Cortez Mills,
Yep.
Larry Miles will be joining the team. Obviously, Isaiah Mosey. You still have Quinn Clark.
I heard Mosey moved to running back. Is that true?
I've heard that he's done some of each. I've seen that.
Which is interesting. I don't mind that, honestly.
Yeah, I could see that. Definitely, and they, I think he did some of that in high school, and he is a little bit of a bigger kid. So yeah, we'll see. That'll be something to watch.
Yeah.
During the fall. But and then Demetrius Bell, we've mentioned him quite a bit. And then Jeremiah Jones. I mean, that's one name I think people keep forgetting about it. Wide receiver. I mean, Missouri came after that dude hard, and I think we're even projected to maybe flip him at one point.
Yeah,
And
right at the end.
we all thought that was going to be a done deal, and Matt Rule, again, like he's done a few times. I would say he did this with Carter Nelson. I would say he did it with Malachi Coleman, and Cortez Mills would be another one I think they finished really strong with. But I mean, just looking back at last year's class, this year's freshman class, the wide receiver hall, I mean, Cortez Mills, Isaiah Mosey, and Jeremiah, they got 3 4-stars in one group. And I don't think that's getting talked about enough, because Jeremiah Jones is, listed as a safety, and he's kind of viewed as a safety, but I don't think he's going to play safety. So, I mean, if you add those receivers and then you add Larry Miles and, Nayland Scott, like, this is a freaking loaded room for these quarterbacks, and they're loaded at quarterback too. So that's a pretty good spot to be in.
If you're loaded at the quarterback position, you want to build around the quarterbacks, and a lot of programs don't do it right or do it at all. And I think Nebraska did it here. They've surrounded their current and future quarterbacks with weapons all over the place.
Then Co Sibs, yep, finally makes sense why they weren't going crazy to get into the running back. So I'm assuming that's a reference to Isaiah Mosey playing some. And I mean, I still think that they are really counting a lot on Ives and Nelson to make a bigger contribution in that backfield. Jamarian Parker, maybe it's a little much to ask him to contribute this season, but I still think there's a chance. I mean, freshmen are just, I know he was limited a little bit in the spring and kind of hurt, but freshmen sometimes can turn it on. Sometimes it takes them a little bit, but halfway through the season, the light might come on for him, and they might be like, it might work out where he gets some carries. I don't know.
Barney, not a running back, but I mean, that was a guy you really saw the light come on. And once Marcus Satterfield left, things got a lot better for him. So, I mean, I'm not really excited Parker to contribute a ton, but just, as a fan, I would love to see what he could do and what kind of skill set he brings to the table in live college football game action.
Yeah, I think I still think that Quentin Ives is going to have to, step up, and he's going to be the number 2 guy this year. So, we'll see how he delivers. I mean, like I've said before, Nebraska offered him. They didn't offer Shamar Brown in 2023. So, I mean, there's a reason for that, and we'll see. I mean, yeah, missing on Shamar Brown, but I always felt, I mean, it could hurt, but I always felt like that was a luxury, and so I didn't think you needed to break the bank for Shamar Brown. So, I mean, I wanted him. For like, there's no doubt I wanted him on the team, but there's, roster management's a complicated thing, and you can't spend a ton of money on a running back. Like when and you can't pay that guy more money than you're paying like Emmett Johnson, for one thing. So that's one part that you have to be careful with. And like, all those guys might not know how much they're getting paid, but you do. And eventually they might find out. Like Emmett Johnson's probably going to eventually find out, like, hey, I'm making 300,000. Shamar Brown's making 500,000. Like, what the hell? You know what I mean? So you just get those little things that can start. They don't necessarily affect your culture, but they can if they're not handled the right way. So I think that's part of the reason why Nebraska's like, we have a number here, we're not going past it. And so, yeah, that's my read on that situation.
And I know Dana Holgerson said he wanted to run the football a little bit more, and it's not going to be a traditional air raid offense, but I do think it still favors, the passing game. So I would have rather spent that money on Claude and Puma than Shamar Brown in this scenario, for example. So, I mean, time will tell, but, I'm kind of interested to see how the running back room shapes out. And again, I'm very happy that they were able to pony up the big bucks for Mpuma.
Yeah, and I think they spent a lot of their transfer money on, Elijah Pritchett, Rocco Spindler, Williams Noweri, some of those, Dason McCullough. So I don't think they had, a lot of money left. If he would have transferred in the winter window,
Yeah.
might have been a different situation, But so yeah, I think looking at this roster, I feel pretty good about it. And I feel better about this recruiting class than I did a couple of weeks ago. Not that I expected this. I think we both said that Nebraska was going to have double-digit commitments by the end of June, and they did. They were up to 11. Yesterday was 12 with Larry Miles, and there's going to be more coming, I think, shortly. But just to take a stock of this class as a whole, looking at the 24/7 Sports team rankings, just overall, they're, I think, 58th now, and they were in the 70s a couple of weeks ago. So they've moved up about, 14, 15 spots over the past 2 weeks. They've got 3 blue chips, just over like the past week in Claude Mpuma, Danny Odom, and Nayland Scott. And Larry Miles is not far away at 500. Hayden Ainsworth is 598. Leon Noyle is 631. Luke Sorensen is 703. I feel like all those guys have a chance to possibly move up, especially if Luke Sorensen is more of a threat in the passing game this year. Not that he wasn't last year. Their offense was not. They had a kind of a younger quarterback in his high school. So hopefully he gets more passing opportunities. I think Jamal Rule is a lot better. He might not get bumped up, but I do think he is a lot better than 799. And yeah, Dayton, it's really weird. Dayton Raiola dropped, and so did Rex Waterman, dropped down to like 17 in the 1700 range, but that's fine. Rex Waterman is a developmental prospect. And like I said, it makes sense on the offensive line to take more guys that are developmental prospects, because like what I feel like Nebraska got 4 players who could potentially play offensive tackle. Okay, so now some of that may not work out. Claude Mempu obviously is going to play that position, or he'll be a bust. I mean, I don't see him moving inside really. But I guess my point of it is you have 4 players who could potentially develop into a starter at like right or left tackle. And I think it's really smart to invest in that position heavily development-wise, because look how much it costs in the portal. And there's not very many guys there. So you have to overpay. And I'm not saying that Nebraska, but they probably did. They probably had to overpay for Elijah Pritchett. I mean, they just did. That's a guy that, I mean, yeah, he's a projected first-round pick, but he also has had, some ups and downs. I mean, it's not like he had a all-SEC career so far, and Nebraska probably had to pay top dollar for him. So if you can get some of those tackles and develop guys, I think it can save you a heck of a lot of money down the road having to chase offensive tackles in the portal. So I think that's part of Nebraska's strategy, and that's why it doesn't upset me to take some of these lower-ranked guys that might need a little bit of time, because in a year or two, I mean, look what they did with the tight end guy that just went to Oklahoma State, Grant Seagrant. That was a former walk-on tight end that now has a chance to start at a Power 4 program. So can they take a 3-star like Rex Waterman and develop him into a starter? I think they can, yeah. And if not, then he can have a chance at guard. But if he does turn into a tackle, then man, they just hit the jackpot and they save themselves a huge amount of money that they can invest toward another position in the transfer portal in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, I was thinking, although not part of this coaching staff, Cam Jurgens and the way he moved. And yes, he struggled at Nebraska, but now he just got a nice new deal at the Philadelphia Eagles. And so that move really paid off for him as well. So I think when you look at, athletic versatility, which I think all 4 of these guys have, right? And when you look at the ability to play multiple positions, you're getting value for your dollar in more ways than one.
Yeah, for sure. And let's see. So, about Parker being a 4-star, he should be semi-ready as well. Yeah, I mean, I definitely think Jamarian Parker could have a chance to contribute this season for Nebraska. Like I said, I was really high up on him coming out of high school. I see some Amon Green in him. So we'll see. Rumor has it, James Allen, that Mosey is going to be used like Barney. Yeah, I mean, I could see that. I think that.
So kind of like the end around, like in space type of player.
I just hope that, if we use that role, and I think that he will be, but I just hope that they're more creative about it with Holgerson. It just got so predictable.
I mean, you and I could call Satterfield's plays on game day. Like, we knew what was coming. Everybody knew what was coming. So I think it will be a little bit more creative. One of the things that I thought Holgerson did really well was, have Ja'Cory Barney line up out wide and then just get him the football, period. No trick plays, just getting him the football and letting him run after the catch. That Wisconsin game in November sticks out to me. You know, he really played well in that one, and that was a game where they utilized more than just his speed and end around skill set. They were able to get him out wide, and he had a great game. But I do think that he's going to be utilized a little bit more creatively under Dana Holgorsen, because it can't get much more uncreative than what happened under Marcus Satterfield.
Yeah, like I remember, I think it was like the Purdue game, and Barney had like 6 catches for like 20 yards or something. I mean, it was something weird like that, and because it was like, dude, you're running the same play, just those weird little end arounds. But
must have been frustrating for Barney too.
Yeah, and just too easy for the defense to read. But still, 55 receptions. 9 for 85 and a touchdown against Wisconsin. 4 for 78 against UCLA. Let's see, Barney won. So he had 5 receptions of over 20 yards last season. So, he's definitely much more than a slot, like gadget type player. I'd love to see him, try to stretch the field with him this season, and with Cortez Mills and with Isaiah Hunter. I know Dane Key's a big time guy too, but like, I think some of those other guys might even be better stretching the field. So it's going to be a fun year for Dylan Raiola in this offense, I think.
And I think when you have the offensive line that he has, we talked about it on Monday, a much better offensive line, in my opinion. I think when you have that protection, and when you have players that know where the ball is going on the offensive line, you know what I mean? Like, I'm sure as an offensive lineman, it was very helpful to know where the quarterback was in the pocket, what plays were being called, and how to block and how to get into a rhythm. So I think that's going to help too.
Plus, the other thing I think that's being underrated a bit is that Dylan Raiola is going to be a different quarterback this year. I mean, last year he was a freshman. This year he's going to be much more of a veteran. And veteran quarterbacks help their offensive line by making quick decisions and helping with protections, and just he's going to be able to recognize like blitzes better this year, and the game is going to start slowing down for him. And he's obviously very well schooled in football, from his dad and all that type of stuff. So I really expect things to be better this season for Dylan on the mental side of things, being able to identify like, hey, here's a protection, or here's a blitz from this side. Here's where I need to go with the football. And I think that's, something that Dana Holgorsen is going to help him with. And just, I think the one thing with Holgorsen is I just feel like he has more, he just has more feel of what to like, if a team's going to blitz, okay, here's how I can, respond to that. I just feel like he's better at making adjustments. And I think,
quickly
yes. And I think Satterfield just struggled with that. I just think he struggled. It's one thing to game plan, but it's kind of like that thing that Mike Tyson said, like everybody has a game plan until you get hit in the face. And when Nebraska would get hit in the face, they just would not know how to react. So.
And then you brought up a great point about protections, Chris. I mean, just having consistency in offensive play calling and confidence in offensive play calling is going to make things a little bit easier. Like, I can't imagine, and we joke about it, but it's the truth, with multiple screenplays on one drive, that it was easy to protect for the offensive lineman because the defense knew what was coming, So I think in that sense, protections will be easier for them too.
I keep thinking it will be a fun year for Dylan with all these wide receivers too, but then I go back to the clip preseason last year of Rule saying he was going to make teams pay, because they were going to burn them, like make teams pay for, I guess, overloading the box. I think is kind of what, and I mean, I definitely agree to a point, but I think this receiving core is much better for one thing. I think that you look at it could have been okay last year.
And you look at players who played well after Holgorsen came in. Jamal Banks was one of them, and I really wish that we had another season with Jamal Banks.
Yeah, Jamal Banks was a nice player, but again, he's not. I mean, he's a solid receiver, but he didn't get drafted. I don't know if he even got signed as a rookie free agent. So it's like, and I mean, Isaiah Nair, did get his opportunity, but he also, I mean, you think about him, just like if he just doesn't drop that pass against Iowa and against Illinois, for one, Nebraska wins 2 more games. Dylan's got another touchdown pass to his credit, so I mean, I get what you're saying, Co, and I think Nebraska fans thought they were going to see this last year from the passing offense, but I really do think that we'll see it this year. And
I agree.
I mean, Dylan was a freshman last year, and being a freshman in the Big Ten, is a little bit difficult. Obviously, I mean, some really difficult defenses. He had, he did have a stretch during the season where it was like, hey, what's going on? He didn't throw very many touchdowns over a few games, but, um, I think that there are also, they didn't have a ton of guys like, burning people and getting open. I mean, there wasn't anybody, I mean, outside maybe of Ja'Cory Barney that like put the fear of God into defenses. Jamal
No,
Banks didn't really do
no,
that, and Isaiah Nair
no.
didn't do that. So, I don't know. And yeah, I would say that sometimes Matt Rule speaks a little optimistically about his team, but that's every coach. I mean, I feel like that, I'm not going to worry too much about that type of thing, but I do remember the comment that you were saying, and maybe the offense probably didn't live up to expectations last year, but I think this year will be better. The offensive line's better. Dylan's going to be better. The receivers are going to be better. I think the run game will be more consistent. So hopefully this year will pan out better than it did last year. But you're right to be. I think that you're right to be cautiously optimistic because it is a growing process. I mean, I
Mm,
don't think Dylan Raiola is going to throw 30 touchdown passes this year. I mean, that'd be awesome if he did, but
yeah.
I don't know that he's going to make that leap. So
And I think the defense will be better. And we
yeah,
saw a
I
lot of
agree.
times last season where the defense, just couldn't get off the field, and next thing you know, they allowed 30 points, and then Nebraska had to score at least 30 to win, and that was a lot to ask for a freshman quarterback at the time. And I do think John Butler, I know people were a little bit apprehensive about him sliding into the defensive coordinator role. Why didn't we get a bigger name? It feels like we settled. But I really do feel confident about Butler due to his ability to develop quarterbacks in the NFL. And also, like we talked about on Monday, his ability to disguise, pressure on the pass rush. He showed me a lot in the Pinstripe Bowl, especially since some players were uh, out for the game. And so I think having a good defense will also help the offense. And I do think it will be better than last year.
yeah, I agree. I think the secondary will be better than last
Yeah.
year. When you look back at, I know that Bo Pelini, not all of Bo Pelini's defenses were great. They had some rough days against the Wisconsins and
Mm,
Ohio States of the world or whatever, but like they had some pretty good defenses, and one of the reasons for that, I mean, they were really good on the D line. They were good on all three levels, but they had always had playmakers in the secondary, and there was always guys getting drafted in the secondary. Like Prince Amukamara was
yep.
a guy. So I feel like that John Butler is going to help the secondary get back to that kind of level. I mean, you got Zaire Wright, Andrew Marshall, Donovan Jones. You've got all these guys we've talked about, and I think he really has a proven history of
Bryson
developing
Weber.
players. Yeah, Bryson Weber is another guy that's going to be fun to watch him work with, and so I think our secondary, which was a huge weakness, a tremendous weakness under Scott Frost, it's gotten better under Matt Rule, I think progressively, but I think this year will be I think that secondary is going to be, much, much better, much more like a Pelini era secondary of, guys making plays. And, I just feel like with like a team against Ohio State, even, I think we're much better suited to match up with them than maybe a few years ago.
Even Illinois. I mean, Illinois, I still have nightmares of Pat Bryant jumping
Yeah.
over the secondary's head for a touchdown. Thank goodness Pat Bryant's no longer in the picture. I loved him as a receiver. But anyway, yeah, I think Butler has a chance to really make the secondary a strong point. I'm so excited for Andrew Marshall. I think he's a guy that doesn't get talked about enough. We talk about him a lot, but nationally, I don't think he's a guy that gets talked about enough, both for his secondary potential and in the special teams. And I'm really excited about how this defense is going to shape up. I saw a video of Michael Rose Ivy working with Williams Noweri a couple days ago. So good to see the past and present / future collide there. They were working together in Missouri, so it was good to see Williams get that work in a little bit.
Yeah, he's one I'm really not sure what to expect from him this season. So hopefully he's in that rotation and can contribute as a pass rusher. But let's so before we wrap up here with the final few minutes, I wanted to look at what's next for this 2026 class. So are these the fireworks and all that, is that going to continue into the month of July? So you're looking, I guess, the next recruit to watch, or if there's a guy that we're on commitment watch 4. I would say it's 4-star linebacker Calvin Thomas out of Texas. He is ranked 254th overall in the 24/7 composite rankings. And there is a lot to like about this kid.
Yep.
He's out of Cypress, Texas. He's 6'3", 210 pounds. He had a final list of 5 teams: Texas, Nebraska, Michigan, North Carolina, SMU. 34 total offers, and he's a track kid, so I love that. He ran 14.88 in the 110 meter hurdles, 38 seconds in the 300 meter hurdles. But he in 2024, 69 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, 7 sacks, 1 interception. So I feel like he's a guy that could play jack. He could play traditional linebacker. Just a really disruptive, athletic player. His commitment date is set for July 12th, but I feel like we might hear some good news before then. What do you think about Calvin Thomas?
I love him. I mean, and this was a guy that I'm not going to say came out of nowhere, but it was a little bit of a surprise. And you mentioned his offer sheet, Texas and Michigan, among others. I mean, that's a pretty good list that we're competing against. So you talk about this linebacker group, not just right now, but the names we have coming down the line. And you and I have talked about it off air before. We love this linebacker group, like the way the linebacker room is really shaking out. I mean, so say hypothetically Thomas commits, you have Thomas, Christian Jones, Dawson Merritt, Shavers, McGahee, Dason. Actually, McCullough's only for 1 year, right? I was going to say.
Yeah.
But McCullough this year, I mean, they've really done a good job. If there's one position besides wide receiver that they've done a solid job of recruiting, it's been the linebacker position. So I would love Thomas. I think he's a really, really solid player. Very athletic. I see him also at the jack position, and I think he would fit well in this defense. So this would be another, blue chip prospect and a really solid get.
Yeah, and then you also have he would come along with Jace Reynolds in this class, who I think is another unique player who could play at a few different spots for Nebraska. So I like that they're bringing in, again, guys that have position versatility, and I like linebackers who have a tendency or a history of getting after the quarterback. I think that sets up well. And Nebraska's had, I think, a lot of success with those kinds of linebackers, that blitzing, kind of wreaking havoc type of linebacker.
Doman.
Yeah, JoJo Doman, and Vincent Shavers is going to be that guy this year. Like, watch out for like, if there's a breakout candidate on defense this year, it's Vincent Shavers. So I don't even think that's like that's like everybody knows that. Well,
we're just here to remind you in case you forgot, Vincent Shavers.
So Calvin Thomas, and then Darian Jones, it's July 4th, I think, or July 5th. I get those dates mixed up for him, but
4th, so Friday.
But yeah, coming Friday, and I don't know. Iowa definitely has, feels like they had the edge, but Tim Verges of Rivals said that Nebraska had given Darian Jones a lot to think about. So I don't know. We'll see. I think I don't have a lot of confidence, but I still believe in Matt Rule to close. So I don't know. I haven't given up hope yet, even though all the crystal balls and everything are saying that it's going to be Iowa.
Yeah, and overall, I feel pretty good about the secondary, depth and, talent. So I feel like Jones would be a little bit more of a luxury. I'd love for them to get him, but we'll see what happens there.
And then the last decision, I would say the other one to monitor is Valdin Sone. Brandon Collier, who's kind of leads all these international recruits. So he's kind of, I would say, his representative of sorts. He posted that it's on Tuesday that a decision could be coming soon for Valdin Sone. It sounds like Nebraska's in the mix, Florida's in the mix, Georgia's really making a push here. So I don't know if a decision in the next week or so is going to be favorable to Nebraska. It might be more favorable to Georgia. So this is one where I actually think it would be probably better in Nebraska's interest if they could if this recruitment gets delayed until the fall and they could try to get him back on campus for like a game. I feel like that's the path to try to get Nebraska to get him, but it's hard to get guys to wait. And with the rev share and everything, teams are pushing for commitments. So we'll see. But Georgia feels like they have a lot of buzz right now with Valdin Sone. So
that'd be tough because I really like Sone. I think he could fit in this defense really well. His physicality, his ability to, rush the passer. But like you said, guys are getting locked into their decisions a little bit more earlier with the revenue share, and I'll be interested to see where this goes. I don't have a ton of confidence just because of Georgia, but I will say that Nebraska's certainly, been pretty active in his recruitment throughout it. So we'll see.
Yeah, and if there was if there was another guy to pay, this would be the one to get out the checkbook for. He's 6'3", 320 pounds. I mean, Georgia really wants him. Like Georgia's all over him, and I think that it's probably because they that's how good of a player he is. And Coach Georgia's already signed a bunch of D-line guys though, but signed they haven't had any signed, but committed. Let's see. Let's look up their class. Not that it matters to them. They'll hoard them all. That's the thing about those SEC teams. Like they know that's where you win defensive line, so they just go after them. Like
Well, also talk about hoard them all. Look at the quarterback room from 2 years ago. You had Dylan Raiola, Brock Vandegrift, and Ryan Puglisi, and Raiola ended up at Nebraska. Vandegrift went to Kentucky, and I don't remember where Puglisi went off the top of my head, but just goes to show that things can change quickly.
So yeah, they do have a bunch of. I mean, Georgia does have a bunch of guys committed on the D line in this class, but nobody that's I would say nobody that's in the Valden-Sone race. They have 26 commitments, which is crazy. I mean,
USC's class is crazy too.
I mean, Ohio State and Michigan both have 20, so that's one thing with the rankings. But so like Georgia has a guy ranked 90th who's 6'2", 285. So I mean that's a good player, but that's not Valden-Sone. They have another guy 6'3", 255. They have an edge in the top 200. So nobody else. They have another guy that's a 3-star, 6'5", 265. So no real another 3-star who's 6'4", 300. So yeah, so they do have some dudes, but Valden-Sone is 320 pounds. Like he's a different kind of dude. So that's why Georgia's still kind of pushing for him. And I mean, that's where you look at Michigan's class. Michigan's got 6 blue chips on the defensive line. They've got 5 defensive line in the top 200 in their. They have more commitments in the top 200 on their defensive line than Nebraska has in their entire class. So I mean, not to say that Nebraska isn't doing well this class, but that's what some of the other teams are doing. So like, it would be beneficial to start getting some of these defensive line types.
Yeah, but that's also Michigan. I mean, there's a huge gap between Nebraska and Michigan, especially with Mason Graham just getting drafted as high as he did in the last draft. I mean, that's got to be pretty enticing for future defensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean for sure, and they've had a lot of guys drafted, which has helped them a lot. And,
Kenneth Grant, even on the defensive tackle, went to Miami.
But it should be noted though that Kenneth Grant was a 3-star, and Mason Graham, when Mason Graham committed to Michigan, you know where he was ranked? Like 900. He was ranked 900th, and so that just goes to show when all these people are like, oh, another 3-star. Well, Michigan had 2 3-stars that became first-round picks. So like, and Colston Loveland was also ranked like 300th. So just because, I
think he got drafted too high, but that's me.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. But I mean, either way though.
I love Grant though. I really do love Grant.
And yet you're right. I mean, Georgia does have at least 3 big D lineman recruits, but that's not going to stop them from trying to get another. Like that's just, especially like that shows you how much Valden-Sone is valued, because they do have all those guys and they're still pushing for his commitment with 26 commitments or whatever. There's not very many guys that are 6'3 and a half, 320 pounds that can move like he can. I mean, that's just, I think he's ranked like 184th. I think he's vastly underrated. I think if you get Valden-Sone, I think you're getting a top 50 caliber defensive lineman, because these international dudes, they know how to, I mean, once the ceiling is so high on these guys, and this Brandon Collier guy knows what the hell he's doing, and he gets quality prospects. And so like, I'm telling you, this Valden-Sone kid, like the sky is the limit for him, and whatever his ranking, like he can easily outplay that and be a first-round pick. So, it might take every dollar of the NIL budget they got for this recruiting class, but it'd be worth it. I mean, if you could give me Valden-Sone, and if you told me that they could have Valden-Sone and nobody else in this class, the 13-man class, I'd take it. That's how good this guy is.
Yeah, no, I definitely would too. And you brought up a good point just real quickly before we out here with the development. That's something I'm going to be watching from this season from Terry Braden. Like, how well can he develop these guys? I mean, obviously he's a Super Bowl champion coach, Coach Chris Jones and things like that. But I'm really interested to see his developmental process at the collegiate level.
Yeah, that's going to be critical. D line, and we should mention with Valdon Sone with Terry Braden, he took the trip over to Sweden to see his family and all that stuff. So Nebraska's
that was a cool trip.
Definitely invested a lot in him, but I'm confident in what Terry Braden can do. I think that's going to prove to be a good hire for Matt Rule. But we'll see. So yeah, that's one to watch with Valdon Sone. If Nebraska gets that, you might see me try to do like a somersault or something on air.
Don't try to do a somersault.
Probably break my neck, but that's how excited I would be.
I'll have to do these by myself, and you'll have to zoom in from your hospital bed, and I don't want that.
Yeah, that won't be good. That won't be good. So, all right, you guys. Well, hey, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah.
Fluter and co-subs, we appreciate all the interaction. If
also,
you haven't,
James earlier this morning.
Yep. Go Big Red. It's always fun to see people from across the country talking Husker football. So, if you guys haven't, hit the like button already. Hit the subscribe button, get into the comment section, turn your notifications on so you don't miss any of our future chats. And if you're watching on the replay, thanks again. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.